Okay, to steal from the late, well, he's not late, but he's certainly great. Brent Musburger. I think I just killed Derek Brent Musburger right off the top. Steal from the
Insane way
great.
to start the show.
It's still very much alive. 85-year-old Brent Musburger. You are looking live, not at a football game, but two white guys talking about a quarterback late on a Monday night. Drake Maye. This episode is all about him. Typically, we do Patriots film. Look, they lost 41-21. I don't think you want to hear how much about the Patriots can't defend wham runs when Houston's running for 54 yards and then 20 yards on a touchdown. So we're going to spend all night tonight with Derrik Klassen, the Athletic, coming back to break down Drake Maye. Because Drake Maye, I will put it in the crude, cliche grade way, Derek, that we love to do on the sports writing end. What grade does he get? I'm giving him an A-. These were the final numbers. 20 of 33, 243 yards, 3 touchdowns, 2 picks, did take 4 sacks. Considering everything around him, I think an A- was fair.
I think against that defense, yeah, A-, I think is totally fair. And like, I think we'll get into all of the reasons why, but like, truthfully, I don't really think either of those interceptions were really his fault. A lot of the sacks were happening like before he even really had a chance to do a whole lot about it. I thought he looked just really good overall. And I would say like he just looked like in control. Like the moment didn't look too big. I think especially for your first game, that's important, especially because like Caleb Williams, his first 2 games didn't look like I had faith that he would figure it out, obviously, but his first 2 games, he didn't look like things were going the right way. I didn't really feel that at all for Drake Maye's first start.
No, very in control. You mentioned the sacks, all of them against 4-man rushes where the offensive line pretty much just lost right away. Like these were not blitzes that fooled him, things he didn't see. So again, for the folks who are live right now, this is new for us at Pat's Interference. Typically, this is me, sometimes with a beer, talking to myself for 40 minutes, offense, defense, game balls, everything you want to know. This is all Drake Maye tonight. We are breaking down every single thing with Derrik Klassen. We will get to some mailbag questions at the end and get really into, again, the quarterback that I think everyone wanted to see. And look, as someone, you and I talked about this last time, wanted Drake to sit, and I'm not in a rush. Just do better than the worst pass protection in the league. Update, they're up to 30th, according to True Media. Most pressure allowed. I'm not going to be the person still driving around with the bumper sticker of the losing presidential candidate 8 years ago. Like, I'm not here to belabor or say, like, I told you so. Drake looked great. I want to see Drake play football. We did, and we're going to get into that today. I want to start here, though. When you rewatched that tape, what surprised you, if anything, that you didn't realize on first look?
I would say 2 small things. I want to start by saying I thought he would look good because I just thought he was a special prospect. And so the fact that he was able to look good was not all that surprising, especially because he got, 5 weeks, whereas the other guys didn't, to kind of sit and figure some stuff out, get more comfortable with the offense. I think what stood out, one, was his drop back footwork actually did look improved and looked a little bit cleaner. I remember there was one play he had where they just have a slant flat concept to the right. It was like a 2nd and long. He obviously opens going to the slant, and just the very small, careful adjustment he makes to go boom, slant, boom to the flat and actually throw that ball, stay on rhythm. I was like, okay, he didn't really do that at North Carolina. And that was one of the big issues coming out. So I thought he looked clean in that sense, which I hoped he would when you get 5 weeks on the bench, but to actually see it was really impressive. And then he in college, he was always a guy where when the chips were down, he was willing to do something kind of stupid. And I know he threw 2 interceptions in this game, but it didn't ever felt like he did something stupid. Like even the first interception is just like, okay, he kind of overthrows it. Receiver gets a little bit pushed off his route, whatever. And then the second interception is like the most nonsense tipped at the line, screen, whatever stupid thing ever. So like, but he didn't really make that mistake where I was like, oh, buddy, what are you doing? Like he pretty much played within himself, which I didn't expect in his first start. I really didn't.
Yeah, I think doing stupid stuff when the chips are down is also just called college. Whether you're Drake Maye or Derrik Klassen or Andrew Callahan, like that's just life. I will say for me, rewatching the game, there wasn't a ton that surprised me. And again, he gets an A- for the reasons you mentioned. Houston's defense is really good. The highest pressure defense in the entire league on a pressure basis, not sacks and not necessarily hits, but they also obviously dealt with injuries up front. He throws for more yards than any Patriots quarterback has since last October. He has as many deep pass completions as Mac Jones had in 3 years when you consider touchdowns. And it's just a whole new world, right? Like this is not any longer the dink and stunk offense that we've been watching here in New England for the last 3 years. The thing that did surprise me, though, is that once he kind of settled in, which even he admitted on, I think it was last Wednesday, I'm going to have some nerves. We'll have to settle in. Like he just was like, oh, this is it. Like you're going to man blitz a lot on 3rd down. And when you're not, I've got 4-man rush and zone coverage, and we're going to go from here. Because his numbers against pressure were really, really good. 7 of 11 for 90 yards, the aforementioned 4 sacks, 12 rushing yards scrambling. Against the blitz, 6 of 12 for 113, 2 touchdowns, a pick, and 11 rushing yards. And we'll get into the blitz a little bit later, but we know generally quarterback numbers versus the blitz and pressure are not sustainable, right? Very noisy, not predictable week to week. How much of what you saw on the tape, though, you said, oh, okay, if he's calm now, I can expect that to maybe be a little stickier. Like that could be sustainable in a way that, could be surprising moving forward.
I think the blitz replacement stuff will be sustainable because this is just something I thought he did really well in college. Like he was just always the guy where he knew where the pressure was coming from. He knew how to replace it immediately if he needed to, just put the blitz where the void is, that sort of thing. But he also did a good job of understanding like where the pressure was coming from relative to his pass blocking. There was even one clip in this game where he knows his line is sliding to the left and he's getting pressure on the right side. He just drifts a little bit to his left and tries to make the throw, and he doesn't hit it. It was one of the first throws that he made, but just that instinctual, like, okay, I know exactly the little things I need to do to make this play a little bit easier for me. I think he's always had that. And then, like you mentioned, a lot of the blitzes in this game were just man blitzes. Like they would just send an extra guy, play man coverage. And I think if you're going to give that to a guy as as talented as Drake Maye, he's going to be able to get some good plays on you. And he certainly did. I think that 3rd and 5 touchdown to Pop Douglas was exactly that, where they just bring an extra guy and he's just really good at that. And so there will probably be a little bit more growing pains when he sees more of the like weird, funky, double A mug zone teams that like will drop bodies off from weird spots. Like there will be a little bit of a learning curve there when he plays the Brian Flores's of the world. But generally, I think he's a guy who's going to handle it well because he always had, and then he did in this game.
So you bring up Pop Douglas, who I think if people had not been watching the Patriots offense would listen to this podcast and be like, are you trying to date the man through the internet? The way that I talk about like play him more, needs more attention. He needs to get the ball. He's so great. He's been on this show before. But we talk about like Drake getting on track, the first 5 drives, they have 3 first downs. He throws a pick. There's a 3 and out in there somewhere. And then they're backed up with less than a minute left before halftime. And Drake makes, I think, my favorite play of this game, which is, spoiler alert, ends up going to Pop Douglas for 22 yards. But it's a full field progression read. He starts in the left. It was some sort of, I don't want to say it was smash, but it was like there was a corner out involved on the left. He wheels all the way back to the right. It's only a 4-man rush. But he not only stays in a closing pocket and gets hit as he makes his throw, but flips it to Pop Douglas off platform. So you have all of the maturity that you want to see, making the full field read. You see the toughness of taking a hit and hanging in the pocket. And then also, this is why you drafted him 3rd overall, because he can fling the ball sidearm as he's getting clobbered. And then Pop Douglas takes a rest, and they kind of build in that connection from the rest of the drive. We all remember that drive as just the giant 40-yard, beautiful parabola that was a touchdown to Kayshon Boutte. What else in that drive did you see when he kind of settled in that said, okay, he's got like a grip, his arms around this game, basically?
So first of all, the decision to throw to Kayshon Boutte I thought was amazing because the situation in the game is they have 15 seconds, 2 timeouts. They're like on whatever the little graphic on the field is for like you're in field goal range. And so a lot of quarterbacks, I would think, especially young quarterbacks in their first start would be like, all right, I need to just get 5 or 6 more yards here. We have the timeouts. We can get in the field goal range. Drake Maye says, nah, I'm good. I'm too talented. I'm going to go throw a touchdown. And he did. And I just love like that mentality is part of why I fell in love with him as a prospect. And so for him to show that on that drive was really impressive. But then you mentioned some of what he was doing with sliding up in the pocket and sliding around guys and drifting and getting into just weird little pockets of space where he could throw a check down. I remember one, I don't remember exactly where it was in the game, but he slides up a little bit, moves out to his right and just like pops a little like flat check down and just little stuff like that where he understands exactly where to move in the pocket and he's not really wasting time. Like he's not really dilly-dallying. He's not moving into weird spots. It just, there was a level of control and command and confidence that he played with kind of after the first drive or two that was like, yeah, man, if you can do that against D'Amico Ryans in your first game, even for as imperfect as some of the execution was, it's just the type of guy I want to bet on.
Yeah. And I think it's the simplest analysis possible when you're like, oh, he's just natural. Yeah. Like, no kidding. Like you watch him in college, but there is something to be said for he's not actively processing. Like this is instinctual. It's reflexive. And for that to be at 22 years old, I'm supposed to be here. I'm good at this. I'm learning, but I just kind of know where to go and what to do. At this age, given, again, an offensive line that had 2 offensive tackles who were claimed off of waivers less than 2 months ago, a center that got there on Thursday on a red-eye flight, and he's like doing more for that offensive line, doing more for the offense, doing more for all of his players and coaches combined in a way that, rather than the service they're doing him, was crazy to me. But like, that's the power of this kid if it eventually pans out, and it's only been 1 game. To put the roses down for a second and stop throwing him in his direction. You mentioned the drop back footwork. I did think that was better. His pick not only was just overthrown, probably some juice behind that. His footwork there, I didn't think was great. And there were a couple other misses where, like, this is a bug in the Drake Maye system. He's just going to miss layups. How did you see his footwork, either align or not, on some of those lesser plays?
The footwork wasn't as big of an issue as I thought it was going to be coming into the game. On the pick he throws, it is a little bit of a problem. I also think because he has like such a shortened throwing motion, I think sometimes it can disrupt his accuracy. Like there's a little bit of like T-Rex going on in the way that he throws the ball sometimes. And I think that can cause some of his issues. But for the most part, I think the accuracy issues, I think because the process looked so good, I'm not that worried about the accuracy stuff, especially in his first game. I mean, again, to go back to Caleb Williams couldn't hit anybody in his first 2 passes, and now he's hitting everybody, and it's not a problem. And so I'm kind of expecting the same thing for Drake Maye. Again, he'll probably have 1 or 2 misses a game that are frustrating because he can get a little bit antsy and like amped up, especially on some of those intermediate throws. But I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue. I also think on that interception where he overthrows, I think it is Pop Douglas a little bit. To me, it felt like Pop Douglas took his route a little bit flat, and I think Maye thought he was going to keep climbing a little bit, and it's still on Maye to understand that he's not climbing and to not throw it higher. But I think, again, that even just goes back to it's your first game. You're not 100% like confident in the chemistry with all these players, and just some weird stuff is going to happen.
Yeah. I can excuse that to a degree. It also looked like Pop needed to climb a ladder in addition to just further downfield.
Right. I mean, he's what, 5'7"?
But I will completely excuse the other pick, which happened in the third quarter, and it just gets tipped and swinged. And like, I don't know, you spend enough time on X or Twitter, and an unhealthy amount, which is my life, particularly in season, and you're going to find people who want to put that on him. I just can't, I'm not going to do it. Like, that's not whatsoever. Insane defensive play.
It's not even just that it got tipped at the line, right? Like, those are going to happen. It's that the defender caught it behind a Patriots player's back, like bear hugging him. Like, that doesn't happen. That just never happens. It's a 1 in a million.
Somewhere on Eric Murray's family tree, David Tyree is a very, very distant cousin. As I just lose half of my audience with that reference, and we'll see those numbers go down. I also want to get into the plan, though, because part of the reason I wanted to wait is I just thought the Patriots needed to figure out what they had and how they were going to operate. It's a new coaching staff, new play caller, basically. You're shuffling in and out of personnel, all the injuries, offensive line stuff. Like, figure out where the biggest holes are in the hull of the ship, then plug them, then bring the kid on to captain that ship. But before we get there, you mentioned Caleb Williams could not complete anything in his first couple of games. That has been my start on Prize Picks here, where we do a segment every single week, and I give you picks for Prize Picks of the week. I'm not going to give out my record, but I just want to tell the folks this. If you want to watch the Patriots and they lose, you can still win at home by playing Prize Picks with as few as 4 correct picks. Meaning, when you go to prizepicks.com and you see these player stat projections, all you got to do is pick more or less. Drake Maye is going to be on there every single week. If you think he's going to throw for more than, let's say, 170 yards, click more. If you think Ramondre Stevenson will have less than 100 yards, you can pick less, or whatever you want to do. Because if you sign up today, you can get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win. You get the $50 bonus. Win or lose, it's guaranteed. This is the best way to win real money this football season. Which players go off, which ones aren't, I don't know. But you can make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your sports opinions, your takes, your fantasy players into real money all season long. Download the app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Okay, Alex Van Pelt, probably not playing Prize Picks. But Alex Van Pelt, I think he called a good game for Drake Maye. Again, they could not run the ball. Antonio Gibson, 13 carries, 19 yards, 33 yards after contact. Like, how do you support a rookie quarterback when you can't run the ball and you identify as a run first offense? Run day being the way they identified. But like, looking at that and understanding how they went more play action heavy early, they had a 62% success rate when passing on first down that says, I know the looks I'm going to get. I'm going to put you in a good spot. And Drake delivered. I think there are outlines of an offense here that can work around Drake Maye, separate from, we obviously love what we saw from him.
I agree. I actually thought they did a better job than I would have anticipated. Again, if they could run the ball a little bit better, that would make this a lot easier. And if you could stay in those down end distances that you want and protect the rookie quarterback, it's kind of impressive again that he looked so good despite being in so many like third and longs and a lot of second and longs and stuff like that. But I actually did think they did a good job of like specifically getting Pop Douglas moving across the formation and like letting him run a lot of his crossing routes that he's really good at, because he's just not a guy who's going to like win one-on-one and like on a curl route, like body somebody out at the catch point. Like that's just not the type of player he is. So I thought they did a good job getting their most explosive passer or their most explosive pass catching option unlocked in that sense. I still would like I would like to see them find some way to attack the middle of the field a little bit better. Whether that's trying to get the ball more to Hunter Henry. Like it's obviously, again, going to be hard to Pop Douglas because he's not very big. So I think if they could unlock that a little bit more, but I thought otherwise the offense looked, I thought they gave him some good options, and Drake Maye for the most part was going to the right spot with the ball.
It's funny you bring up Pop Douglas not bodying anybody, let alone like 12 yards downfield in a curl route. I think one of the incompletions that Maye threw, only 3 of them in Pop Douglas's direction, 6 catches on 9 targets, was on a curl route downfield, which will bring me back to something later. But, you talk about, okay, what was the game plan? Again, early play action, good first down play callings. They tried to run the ball. You got some movement throws. His first completion was this 8-yarder to Kendrick Bourne at a bootleg, something I had talked about last week. Is I think they're going to dip more into this because he's mobile. There was also pressure on that play. He got away.
That is the funniest bootleg I've ever seen, where obviously he starts faking out to his left so he can do the play fake, and the left guard immediately loses and he gets bumped as he's doing the fake. I don't know, like the last time I've seen that where you get hit on the rollout like that. It was so weird.
Yeah. Well, I also, and I'm trying to assign all the pressure here, and basically, look, there's, Demontre Jacobs gave up 5 pressures, and that happens when you hang out with Danielle Hunter long enough, whether you're playing football or you're just on the couch. The pressure otherwise wasn't that bad. And like Ben Brown just got here, but Michael Jordan, I think, had the wrong run action that they were going. Like Maye made this check and the arms waving out, I think on this game was outside zone. A week ago, it was duo. And he just completely leaves the guy in front of him, which leaves Ben Brown trying to make this reach block that's like 2 Ben Browns over from him, and he just couldn't get there. Anyway, Maye got away. He made the completion between 0 and 10 yards of the line of scrimmage, which, again, talk about the game plan. Get the ball out, live over the middle of the field. He was 13 to 16 for 98 yards and a touchdown. That, to me, again, put him in a good position, let Demario Douglas go to work over the middle, was a good sign for Alex Van Pelt, who's been getting flogged publicly. And I just think he deserves more credit for this, and gives me hope moving forward of knowing how to work with Maye.
Yeah, I agree. And like if Maye can, I think part of it too was the short part of the field was probably always going to be the toughest part to like get Maye to be consistent, just based on what he was in college, again, with some of the drop back footwork and every now and then some of his decision making in the quick game. I think it actually speaks to Van Pelt's coaching, not even just with some of the schematic stuff, but the fact that Maye executed it so well in his first start kind of speaks to like what they've been able to drill into his head and how well Maye has taken to it. And I think that's like a part of coaching that we sometimes forget about. Is like, yeah, all the scheme stuff is really cool, but at the end of the day, you also have to just get your players to execute the right thing and like do it the right way and get all the details down. I do think in that sense, Van Pelt, the connection there with Maye actually seemed like it's going pretty well.
Yeah, and that's why he's here. Like I wasn't thrilled by the hire, I'll say, but if you're asking what do the Patriots need in 2024, defensive first-year head coach who's 38, rookie quarterback, like someone who develops, had played the game and does all of the physical stuff. And the scheme is whatever. Like I want to get into that now because I just gave Miss Flowers the game plan, but I've got this contention. Part one is I think there are a lot of isolation routes. Like this is an old bones West Coast offense that asks its receivers to win a whole lot. And I just go, there's no one besides Pop Douglas who can do that. Now, you say things often enough on a podcast or TV or radio or wherever, like people just tune you out. Should I get ahead of that in your view, watching this offense? Do they need a little bit more motion, switch releases, motion into stacks, bunches of those things? Because I think they're going to need that just given the receivers they had, as good as Maye was, even against man-to-man coverage when the numbers are here somewhere. I think he was over 50%. But as far as that contention, like less isolation, more helping each other out.
It's like a double-edged sword where I think a lot of the motion stuff and getting into some of these like bunch and stack formations and stuff, it can obviously just by alignment and like by friction, you can get some guys open like pretty easily and give the quarterback some easy throws and take the ease off of, again, skill players who are not very good at just winning one-on-one and beating guys. At the same time, I think when you do a lot of that, it actually takes like some of the responsibility away from the quarterback. And for some guys, that's good. You just want them to go out there and make the throw. I think some guys, it's actually good to have the mental burden on them and like let them be the engine that drives the offense. You see this a lot with Dak Prescott and the Cowboys. And like, obviously they're a bad team for a billion reasons right now. But like, even when
and it's
the
a
Cowboys,
McCarthy Van Pelt offense, like they're coming from the
right,
same place, the way this is structured and the way they call games and structure their passing game.
exactly. And that's why it looks so similar. It is like the Cowboys and McCarthy are very good being like, all right, we have a supercomputer at quarterback. We're going to let him go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, do everything he wants to do pre-snap and operate that way. And if that is the way that New England feels is giving them the highest floor as opposed to some of the motion stuff, and if they really think that Drake Maye is that smart, I totally get it and stick with that. But the receiving core probably is so in dire need of help that some of the motion stuff, some of getting into stacks, just asking May to make throws and hoping that you can scheme it open. At least a little bit more of that would probably be nice.
Yeah. So what else would you do? And I want to give proper flowers to, again, Pop Douglas had 92 receiving yards. This is the saddest stat that come out of Sunday. Otherwise, a very good day for the Patriots. That's the most by a Patriots pass catcher since Christmas Eve, 2022. So with that as a backdrop, statistically, like aside from the stuff we just hit on, what, if anything, are you doing personnel wise or schematically or formationally with May now that he's at the controls of an offense that should look much different than what we have with Jacoby Brissett?
Yeah, again, I think some of his best throws coming out of college were throwing like dig routes and seam routes just over the middle of the field. And again, I don't know necessarily, I don't know if I have the answers how to get there with this personnel group, but I do think that those are a lot of the best throws that he made, trying to throw that like intermediate middle of the field. So if they can try to chip away at unlocking that over the next few weeks, whether it is in heavier personnel, some of their 12, like getting into 12 personnel under center, or if they just want to spread it out and go gun that way, to me, it doesn't really matter. But just unlocking that part of the field, I think, is important. I'm also surprised they didn't use him at all as a designed runner, really, in this game.
Yeah.
Not that he has to be a guy who gets 10 carries or anything a game, but I was surprised they didn't really sprinkle it in. Maybe just they figured he was taking enough hits back there already, and the game started to get out of hand. But I do think, I also expect that to be something they start to sprinkle in a little bit, especially if the rushing offense without him is going to continue to struggle.
Well, and that hits on something too that fundamentally is changing, not even on purpose, but just the dynamic of putting him at quarterback. Like, plays are now not dead, Derek, when the receivers are covered. They have a plan B. The plan B looks great. It looks like him scrambling for 11 yards. It looks like him extending a play, finding Hunter Henry, and then that goes for 30 yards. And so these second reaction plays that are like, has all the media attention and fans' attention about what the quarterback position means now, just like everyone in their driveway is shooting like Steph Curry and bouncing back from 40 yards. You want to look like Patrick Mahomes and all Josh Allen and all these quarterbacks. Like, the Patriots have a little bit of that now. They can cook when the burner doesn't go on immediately right away. And so I think that too is something that will be a balance when you think about, okay, what does Drake Maye look like in the next 2 to 3 games? What can I predict? I think there will be, okay, I got not away with this, but I had a lot of success. He averaged 8.5 yards per play when he extended a play. That works. I'm curious how much they might want to rein him in, understanding he could get clobbered more than he did against Houston. And then there's a fine line, especially when you're a rookie, from playing a little bit more backyard ball versus what's with the design of the play, and sometimes just giving up on it.
I think he actually did a really good job of giving up on plays at certain points in this game, or not even giving up, but like in certain, like he straddled the line of knowing when to give up and knowing when to just like, okay, I need to go and make a play. Like literally his first pass attempt, they run like a bench concept. So they're running like, it's like a little 5-6 yard out, and then they have the deep corner over it. He pretty much throws the ball out of bounds. And I don't think that's a miss. I think that's him immediately realizing, okay, this is not open. I'm just going to leave it out of bounds. If I throw it a little bit short, my guy has a chance on it. Cool. CJ Stroud, who is an obviously good quarterback, literally did the same thing later in the game. And so like that to me, like that's how I'm trying to let people know this is not cope. Like a very good quarterback literally made the same throw later in the game. And so I thought that was impressive. And then to me, the best, I think, extension play that he had was they had like an offset stack to the left at one point in the game. And they're trying to run like this vertical stem and get one guy open on a dig route like late. But because they're playing man coverage, it all just gets like muddied up. And as soon as Drake turns his eyes over to the left, he realizes it's all muddied up, and it's going to take too long for him to wait on that throw and throw it. He just immediately goes. Like he doesn't He's not sitting there like, do I need to wait? Do I need to throw it? Yes. And he just ran up the middle. He like bounced into the running back for a second. It was that play. But
why not?
Why not? Just the fact that he was so ready to just immediately knew that, okay, this isn't open. I'm immediately ready to go. Again, that's good coaching, and then good on him for taking it. So I'm again kind of surprised that they've, at least through one game, coached more of the idiot do some crazy stuff out of him than I thought there was going to be.
Yeah. And he, against man coverage, talk about some plays are just not there. Booty got jammed on that first third down where he throws it, into the third row. And you're like, okay, that was extreme. But to your point, you're right. Like it was completely covered. He said, I'll move on. I'm just curious. You get like a little bit of that success. You're like, oh, I can handle this. And then you push the envelope a little bit more, which there's something to be learned there. Like you don't find out what your limits are until you push them. In that regard, the point about man coverage, where again he gained that big play, the 11-yard scramble. He was 6 of 11 for 113 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Those numbers are better than anything Jacoby Brissett had. Not a huge bar, obviously, but this is an offense as a whole that had 10 completions, 10 in the last 3 games combined against man coverage. To almost get there in one game when you're trailing, and Houston's playing a lot of man. They're playing a lot of man coverage for them because there's no base defense, but. Was just astounding. It's a totally different game changer. What are we missing here so far? Like something that if you were making this rundown, you'd talk about Drake Maye, we would have hit on already in the first 20 minutes.
I don't know. I feel like we've hit on a lot of it. I do have one specific play that I thought just kind of speaks to. I want to set the table by people in the draft process thought that Drake Maye was just like big arm, big athlete, idiot. And like he had some of those plays, right? But I think people thought he was much more of a project than he actually is. And I think
one of them used to coach the Patriots.
It would appear so.
Yeah.
But to me, there was a play in the middle of the fourth quarter. I think there was maybe 8 minutes left. So the game is blown out by now. I understand that. But they have one of their receivers in a tight split to the right side. I think it's Kayshon Boutte, and a tight end right next to him. Boutte runs like a 12-yard out route. And then the tight end next to him is like chip releasing into the flat. Derek Stingley is playing as the flat corner in between them. Drake Maye knows this. He knows the game with what flat corners are trying to do. And so he like shakes his shoulders and looks at the flat route, gets Stingley to sit under it for a minute, and is able to throw over the top of him and throw it to Kayshon Boutte. And that was just like, dude, really good NFL quarterbacks do that. And like, that is what it's supposed to look like. That's a guy who understands how the game is supposed to be played. I just thought it was so impressive. He had just the confidence and all that stuff to do that.
So I'm glad you brought that up because I remember watching that from the end zone angle. And look, I spend Mondays basically in this chair. Like this has been by force
you and me both
chair for me sitting on it for 10 years. Yeah, or 10 years, 10 hours per day. And I'm watching the end zone angle, and he gives this like little shimmy shake, like I'm gonna pump fake and drive into you and then step back. And I'm like, what was that for? And it was a 13-yard completion. It was Kayshon Boutte on the corner. So it's the honey hole there and kind of the spot behind the flat corner. And they had run play action, which they didn't do a ton of, but he was 4 for 4 on play action. They would run at a 16% rate. They can do more of that. It just encapsulates where, again, I think they have a system that works for him. He knows what he's reading and he gets to it immediately. It was on first down as well. That it was just, I'm glad you brought that up. And it also highlights something where I think they can go to that well a little bit more, assuming they're running the ball, or it's just a close game because you get down 14-0 and your game scripted like gone, that you can run a little bit more of that stuff. And even on play action from the gun, he's adding elements in there that might have been missing with Jacoby Brissett.
Absolutely. And like, I think that play also kind of drives the point home too. He kind of beat the Texans defense. Like there was at least one clip where you could say he beat them in like every way, where he had like the blitz replacement against man, where he just hits Pop Douglas over the middle. He has the deep ball to Kayshon Boutte that we already talked about. He's beating cover 2 here in this instance, and like understanding how to move guys with his eyes. All of the plays that he was able to make as a scrambler, some of the stuff that he was able to move around a little bit in the pocket, stay patient, find his check down. Like he just, almost every way you could beat a defense, he did it at least like once, which again, you're gonna have to do it more than once, as your career goes on and stuff like that, and as the team gets better. But just the fact that he like checked so many boxes in just one game, I was like, it's what you want it to look like.
Yeah. Okay. Now I want to think about this from a defensive perspective, because they're going to run into Jacksonville in London, and I don't know, like London might reject Pat's Jags like a bad organ transplant. But generally speaking, defense will look at this and go, okay, man coverage, he's looking for Demario Douglas. maybe we double him, because he saw Douglas did 7 targets in critical situations, meaning 2-minute drill, third down, or in the red area. And Douglas as a weapon versus man-to-man coverage is obviously a really good idea. And he diagnosed it and he beat the blitz. Again, Drake Maye did not take a single sack against the blitz from Houston that blitzed him on about a third of his dropbacks. And then we want to contain him because these scrambles hurt Houston. 38 rushing yards, most that they gave up to anyone wearing, well, basically just red and white, but usually a little bit of blue there. How else do you see defenses reacting based on the initial film and what you think we'll see in London and beyond to what Drake Maye has shown he can do?
I mean, I think the best way to rush the passer with him is not necessarily bring a ton of extra bodies, but if you can just do some of the twists and loops and stuff, like he's typically a guy that understands how to move around that stuff. It's just that there are certain ways to where like you can force a loop or force an overload on one side and then have somebody coming around the other side where you're like baiting him to slide into one side. And I think because he's a guy who's so willing and quick to move that you can get him that way. I don't know if that's like a tried and true way to get him, but that might be your best way to get him once or twice. I do think there is some chance they try to crowd the middle of the field and especially not let Pop Douglas get going. I think there's some chance of that because he is their most explosive player. At the same time, when you do a lot of that stuff, whether it's you're just playing cover one or you're playing some sort of bracket over the middle, you're obviously going to have less help on the outside and you're going to be able to throw some of those one-on-one balls outside the numbers. I know the Patriots receivers are not the best at that, but man, Drake Maye can throw him, dude. Like he is very willing to throw those throws, whether it's like 12-yard curl, an out route, again, a go ball to Kayshon Boutte, like any of that stuff. He's very willing to make those throws. And I think he will at least keep defenses honest in that sense. So it's kind of hard, especially with only one game of film, to like understand exactly what defenses want to do to him. But that's probably where I would see it.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting too because I don't think they're going to stop playing a lot of man coverage. You know, you start with the receivers and be like, okay, we got this. Like we'll play one-on-one. And Kayshon Boutte did beat Derek Stingley down the sideline. Next gen stats had only 0.8 yards of separation. Whatever, 2 feet, 3 feet, you separate, you catch a touchdown, that counts. But most of the work done there was Drake Maye dropping a bomb with pinpoint accuracy. So there will be a little back and forth. Jalen Polk, I think, will be better. He's got to get going. He had 2 drops yesterday, and he's bottom whatever in separation, but at the catch point and yards after the catch, according to next gen stats, all this different stuff. But Kendrick Bourne's back. They just need X, which they don't have. And so they're just going to rotate guys in there who have to win one-on-one down the field. Sticking with Pop Douglas, and soon we'll get to mailbag questions and get out of here. This is a question I told you off air. Okay, I want to get into this because I look at him and go, he's their best receiver. Pick your metric. I don't care. He's number 1. And yet their offense as a whole, the numbers would tell you, operates most efficiently with 2 tight ends. And so when the Patriots go to 2 tight ends, he's coming off the field because he's the slot receiver. You need bigger guys who can win outside. I would argue then either the Patriots need to find ways to become more efficient from 11 personnel where he can be in the slot and he's surrounded with 2 other receivers, or put him in more of these 2 tight end sets, because when they were in 11 personnel, they had a rushing success rate of 33%. Not very good. They also took all 4 of their sacks because it really helps, and did on the 40-yard touchdown to Kayshon Boutte, to have Hunter Henry chip for Demontre Jacobs and give him a little extra time so Drake Maye can throw that touchdown. Which of those 2, putting Pop Douglas as an outside receiver in 12 personnel, or believing somehow you can manufacture more efficiency from 11, would you turn to if you were Alex Van Pelt?
I think it's trying to find some way to be more efficient out of 11 personnel, and I don't necessarily know what the answer is there. But I think if you go to 12 personnel and you have one of your only 2 receivers be a guy who typically doesn't play outside, which is kind of already a problem to begin with, and then just doesn't have the build to really win outside, like. And I'll fully admit this. I am like anti small receiver. Like even like people love like Tank Dell. I'm like, he's okay. Like he just like there are certain limitations.
You don't love Tank Dell on Sunday? CJ Stroud left Tank Dell.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I just think there are like certain limitations with being a smaller receiver. And I think that's probably why it looks so up and down, even in 11 personnel, even though he is their best pass catcher. It's just that blocking wise, like if he's going to be in the slot, which he always is, it's kind of hard to do some of the stuff that you want to formationally because of that. And then like his route tree is a little bit limited. And so even though he is very explosive and he is their best just run across the field type of guy, I think he is still limiting in some ways. And that's probably why they prefer to have some of the bigger bodies that they have. So I would still say just trying to find ways to be more efficient out of 11, if that's possible.
Yeah, and that depends a lot on the other receivers who they're going to be singled up outside. I mean, even if you're, if the splits are wide enough and they're in quarters or cover three, like that might as well be man to man out there, and you just have to
Mhm.
trust your guys can win. And so far, the Patriots receivers have not. That's again why I'm emphasizing more Pop Douglas. Keep your best receiver on the field. Granted, you don't want him coming down to crack on a crack toss, and this is a run first
Yeah.
offense, so the blocking matters a little bit more. But okay, it's a little bit of an identity crisis that they have. Granted, many would argue their crisis is the five men up front who are coming and going, like the whole line is an airport. But we're going to get to the mailbag. I have one more question for you about Drake Maye. In the meantime, I'm going to London next week. I am taking my wife. I'm taking a very close friend who is a Jaguars fan. I don't know what befell him in childhood, but somehow he stumbled into that. And when I got them tickets, I went to Game Time because Game Time has the lowest price guarantee wherever you want to get your tickets. And if you find tickets elsewhere that are cheaper, they will credit you 110% of the difference. And this doesn't go just for the NFL or the Patriots or games in London. It also goes for the NBA, which starts next week. I was fortunate enough to cover the Celtics finals run. I think they're going back. So if you want to go to a Celtics game, potentially in a back-to-back campaign, go to Game Time where you can find tickets for every single Celtics game, all games across the NBA. There's nothing like the last 2 minutes of a basketball game, everyone screaming on their feet, and especially when your team has a chance to win. So go do that now. Treat yourself with Game Time picks where it filters out all the fluff, only incredible deals, great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets and comparing and all those pesky fees. All of this at the Game Time app. Create an account. Use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, just create an account and redeem code CLNS. This is like finding $20 in your pocket, except for it's from me to you. Go to Game Time and download the app today. What time is it? Game time. Okay, well, now it's time to talk more about Drake Maye. What I don't know. Like, how excited are you? I guess moving forward, like you and I were both just at the front of the train, couldn't even see the caboose of everyone who's joined now. I'm excited to see Drake Maye play football and usher the Patriots into this new era. No more again dink and stunk offense. Like, has that gone up appreciably? Did he meet your expectations? Are you still concerned about the offensive line? Like, where are we going to dismount here before we get to the mailbag?
I think the best way I would put it, and we kind of mentioned this a little bit, is I thought because of the state of the offense, because of the state of the offensive line, because it's only been 5 weeks, I know that's more time than some of the other quarterbacks got, but it's only been 5 weeks. I just didn't think that they would get as much of the volatility out of him as it seemed like they got out of him in this first start. And I'm sure he's going to have some up and downs over the course of the season. Like, that's just natural for any rookie quarterback. But the fact that it didn't look really chaotic at all in his first start, I thought was really encouraging. So in that sense, I feel pretty good. Like, about the players specifically, like him himself, I'm exactly where I was coming in, which is I think he's incredible. But the fact that he was able to kind of weather the storm around him for the first week, I thought was really nice, really encouraging.
Yeah, I said last week on TV I was at 8.8 out of 10, which is not only a nod to my father-in-law who has a great deal of affection for the number 8, but also to say, like, I got a little anxiety about what happens next. Like, a 40.4 pressure rate, A, is the best of the season for the Patriots, and yet your center is still learning his teammates' first names. So it gets easier against the Jaguars. Don't get me wrong. I am rooting to be wrong about this, that this is too early for Drake Maye. I very much hope that's going to be the case. But there's a part of me that just goes, there are a couple of hits in that first half that would have been Exhibit A in an unsafe working conditions lawsuit if he chose to pursue them. Instead, he got his hand on the game. He did Drake Maye things, and everything was okay. All right, on to the mailbag, and then we'll get out of here. Carlos, longtime listener, he wants to know, do you guys believe that Drake Maye elevated receivers like Pop Douglas and Kayshon Boutte, or have they been held back by poor quarterback play? Basically, how much credit do you give to Drake for how well they played versus how well they played on themselves? How much credit do they get?
I mean, I think they kind of just were who they were. Like Pop Douglas obviously was really explosive in certain senses, and I think the fact that he was able to get off the line on that 3rd and 5 touchdown, I thought was really impressive. But there were a couple of routes where he did get bullied and got pushed off his spot a little bit, and he's always been that way. It's just that Maye did a really good job of, in those moments where he could find him, getting him the ball and getting some explosive plays that way. Kayshon Boutte, kind of the same thing. Like, I think he has always had this kind of potential to be able to stretch the field. And even on that play, he doesn't really get that much separation. Drake Maye just puts it in the exact right spot. And he's probably not going to do that every single time. But the fact that Maye could do that, I think, was certainly an elevation from what they were getting previously. Like, I think Brissett has always been a guy who, when the conditions around him are helpful, he can, like, really let the offense be what it needs to be. Like if you have the 12th best offense, he can make you the 12th best offense by being out there. But if you're the 30th best offense, he's not going to make you any better than that. And whereas I think Drake Maye, because of some of the scrambling, because of some of the arm talent, kind of gives you a little bit more of that boost.
Yeah, I've equated this many times before in this podcast of like, okay, a quarterback with his abilities to extend plays is like having an NBA player who can create his own shot with 5 seconds left on the clock. Like you ran your set, horns went to shit, and no one's open in the corner, and you're just screwed. Like someone's got to chuck it up. He can make those shots. That's what you need in the modern league and separates good quarterbacks, or certainly slightly below average like Jacoby Brissett from the good ones. They do elevate in the way. I will say, Pop Douglas was unlocked in a way that Bill O'Brien did not unlock him. Mac Jones, Bailey Zappi, Alex Van Pelt through 5 weeks did not unlock him. I think that was just Drake Maye picking the right matchup over and over again. That's always been there. But Kayshon Boutte had that ball put in the absolute perfect place downfield. It's not to knock Kayshon, who got open enough, but no one would have been disappointed had Drake missed this 40-yard throw right before the half. So because it was pretty tight coverage. Speaking of making throws, Kurt asks, Drake made some throws under pressure that were athletic and not structurally sound in his point of view. At what point are the coaches okay with this natural talent taking over and doing what comes natural to him versus traditional quarterback mechanics? I'm going to guess, Derrik, you don't care very much about that.
I don't care at all. Go watch CJ Stroud. Go watch Jordan Love. Go watch almost all of the best quarterbacks. Like they are I think the best way to play quarterback right now is when you can be fundamentally sound and when you can play with a good base, all that stuff, you do it. And a lot of the best quarterbacks are that way. Like obviously Dak Prescott, and like even if you just watch CJ Stroud, when he has a chance to be clean and in structure, he's as pretty a thrower as anybody. But when he has to go find a weird throwing angle and jump off his back foot or like submarine a ball somehow to get it out, he knows how to do it, and he's very confident in his ability to do so. I think Drake Maye has that like athletic ability, that bounciness, that like loose type of arm angle to be able to do all that stuff. So he'll probably have some misses because he's doing that. Like I remember Lamar Jackson's rookie year, he kept trying to sidearm and people were like, what is he doing? He's missing some throws. I'm like, trust. Like he is a guy who knows what he's doing and he'll figure this out. And he's one of the coolest guys at doing that now. So I think that's kind of the path for Drake Maye as well.
Isn't that their phrase anyway? Big trust.
Yes.
no second T. Yeah. Just trust straight up. Yeah. I think it's just, you mentioned submarine, and that got me thinking about like Chad Bradford and these old Red Sox relievers who would throw sidearm baseball in the brain. But look, if the ball gets there and it's accurate, and you don't need Tommy John surgery to be extreme for a minute and still stick with baseball, that's fine. Like that is the modern position. And wouldn't you rather have that arm slot unlocked or those abilities? Like, do you think Peyton Manning would turn down that chance to throw the ball like that if he knew he could get there on time? No, it's new. So there's a time to say, oh, is this consistent? Is it sustainable? Is it even healthy? Answer is yes. But you need to see it first. We saw it from Drake Maye in college. It's kind of like the new prototype for the quarterback. All right, a couple more. Well, this is not Drake Maye, but we'll sneak it in here. Lawrence goes, besides offensive tackle, center, and receiver, do the Patriots need more help on the defensive side of the ball?
I think at corner. I think corner and probably still a little bit up front, but I think Belichick got away with less than ideal or like very specific cornerback talent for a very long time in this defense. Like just deploying guys in the exact right way. And he was able to make it work. Obviously, I think Christian Gonzalez is good. But even in this last game, having a guy like him getting stuck trailing Stephon Diggs, like that's the exact type of receiver he's just not built to handle. And that's going to happen, right? Like Richard Sherman was a Hall of Fame cornerback. That is also not the type of receiver that he was very good at handling all the time. And so like that's just going to happen. And so I think if they could get a little bit more help in the secondary and then have a linebacking core that wasn't only good at hitting guards, I think would be good. Like again, Belichick was so good at putting the defense and calling it in such a way that those niche skill sets could kind of work out and you could be better than the sum of your parts. And this is no knock on Gerard Mayo, but he's just not been able to do that through 5-6 weeks. And it's a really hard thing to do. Again, it's hard to beat Bill Belichick. But I think the talent is probably going to have to get a little bit better on that side of the ball. Yeah.
The talent does have to get better. I'll say this. I, again, spent all day going over the film. It wasn't just Drake Maye. You can read and find clips and GIFs and stats and breakdowns of everything that happened and went wrong on defense. Tomorrow morning in the Boston Herald, it's up at 7 a.m. And the name you're going to see a couple of times is Raekwon McMillan, who just flatly has not been good enough the last 4 weeks, trying to replace Juwan Belly, who is that big thumping linebacker. Like, I'm just going to come in as a missile. I don't know how this is going to look after it's done, but I know you are going to be in the wrong end of what's about to happen. And that's good enough when you're a big thumping linebacker. McMillan got washed out on the 20-yard touchdown run that Joe Mixon had late. He got washed out on the longest run of the game, 59 yards. And the Texans were just running wham. So they said, hey, Devon Godchaux is the only problem we have here up front blocking. We're going to not block him initially and have a tight end come over from the side and pop him. And then once he's neutralized, we're off to the races because McMillan's not big enough. And we handled on the edge where Keon White gave up an edge on that first run that went for 59 yards. And then Anthony Jennings gets spun around and all these different things. So the point is, it is a personnel problem. And that's unfortunate because you can't really do anything about it. And they just kind of have to ride this out. But lucky for them, their schedule gets much easier the rest of the way. Circling back to AVP, Jordan wants to know, what grade would you give AVP for yesterday's play calling, specifically for helping Drake Maye in his first start?
I mean, like a solid B or B plus. I think given like the personnel deficiencies, he kind of did the best that he could. And especially too, like, you know, you mentioned they only ran like 4 or 5 play action plays. Part of that too is just not only were they not running the ball well, which, you know, you can maybe say he should design that a little bit better, but I don't know. I think if they just had the backs that they wanted and the offensive line that they wanted, it wouldn't be as much of an issue. But they were also just down on the scoreboard. And so it's hard to do a lot of your run pass conflict stuff when you're down 2 scores. It's not very convincing that you're going to run the ball very much.
You want to run? Cool. Please keep it up.
Fine. Yeah, drain the clock when you're down 2 scores and you're probably not going to score anyway. That's totally fine with us. So I think that was really more of the constraint on him than like him having any issues as a play caller.
Yeah, and my issue with the lack of play action in the first 5 weeks was that, okay, this whole system is designed on running the ball and generating explosive plays off of play action. And I get you can't protect, but at some point, where are the explosive plays coming from? Well, with Jacoby Brissett, it was play action or bust. He completed 1 deep pass before his last 2 passes this year, where just like Houston, when the Patriots wanted to run the ball, said, oh, cool. Miami, watching Hunter Henry stay in bounds on a 25-yard completion, was like, oh, Jacoby, you want a deep completion? Cool. The clock's gone. We win. The explosive plays now are not dependent on scheme with Drake Maye. It's, I want to throw this ball 40 yards down the field, and I'm going to put it where I want it, and that's going to be a touchdown, and we're in this ball game. Like, he is a walking explosive play. It's not always going to be there, but he unlocks a lot more for the Patriots than they had before. We're going to end on this one because I am a humble host. I am Pat's Nation coming after me, but he says y'all. So we're in this together. Do y'all still think it was too soon to start Drake? Crying, laughing emoji.
So I actually said on the Athletic show, me and Robert kind of went back and forth on this, but so when I first saw the news that he was going to start against the Texans, I was like, that's a tough game to throw him out there for. That kind of sucks. But then I thought about it more and I was like, all right, this Patriots offensive line is not going to get any better. And it's the NFL. They're going to face a lot of good defenses kind of regardless. And he's going to start at some point in this season regardless. So the more I thought about it, I was like, whatever. It's probably fine. I don't think one game's going to kill him. And then it turns out, you know, if you listen to the last 45 minutes, it didn't kill him. If anything, he looks really good. So
yeah. Look, I said at the beginning, I'm not going to be the person driving around with a bumper sticker from a losing presidential candidate 8 years later, like thinking somehow that they had actually won or you're just holding on to something that didn't happen. Like, Drake Maye's here. I'm going to choose to be happy about this and celebrate it. And I do still have concerns, long-term concerns. It's not one game. Oh my God, he gets tackled. Like, he gets hurt. This is the NFL. I'm aware what I'm covering, what I'm looking at. But I'm also aware of the effects of just long-term sustained pressure. And it's not that Drake's not tough. I think he's tougher than Mac Jones, who broke, obviously, under sustained pressure. It's just we have a long ways to go. I would have waited a little bit, understanding this season is a bridge to next year, to the next era. But that can be expedited if Drake survives, learns how to thrive, as we saw for spurts on Sunday, and gets to his second year and is like, I'm ready to roll, man. This is my show. Because it was on Sunday, and it looked awesome. Okay, he's Derrik Klassen. Listen to him in the Athletic Football Show live on Sunday nights. This has been our first time going live on a Monday here. Normally the film is just me, sometimes a beer, and a lot of stats, and then I leave, and sometimes I have to go to TV, which I do now. This was much better than that. Thank you, Derrik, for hanging out, indulging the Drake Maye Fest. And I don't know, when do you want to come back? When he throws for 5 touchdowns or 500 yards?
I mean, whichever one comes first. You don't really have to twist my arm to do a whole nother show about Drake Maye. So whenever that happens, I'll be on call.
Awesome. We will see you next week. See you, man.
See ya.